Kange, Kaneene. I work here at SAP and happy to host all of you. Thank you for coming. I lead SAPAO for North and Latin America, which is SAP's external startup accelerator. I'm here with my friend Zara, who I met because she is a member of our portfolio SAPAO, and she is doing some amazing things with pay inequality for a company called Gap Square. Welcome, Zara.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great. So Zara is one of the founders that I think represents what was talked about earlier, which is meeting the demand, not the supply. But we'll get into that a bit later. So she was doing some research and she realized that it will take 217 years for men and women to be paid the same in the workplace. And that was back when she was thinking about starting the company, but now that gap is even wider. So she thought, if I could build a consultancy to talk to organizations about this situation, how to fix it, that would be effective. But then realized that that's not scalable, so she decided to pivot. So can you talk about the pivot and what Gap Square is about, please?
Yeah, thank you. So in 2015, the World Economic Forum was telling us we are 217 years away from achieving parity between men and women. And at the same time, other reports from the World Economic Forum were telling us that by 2030, a lot of us will be in self-driving cars. NASA was telling us by 2030, we will actually be waving people off to Mars. And yet when we're there with all of this high tech, self-driving cars, waving people off to Mars, we're still somehow 200 years away from achieving parity between men and women. So that's why I was thinking, what is a good way to utilize that innovation and that tech to help organizations look and understand their data so that they can take better decisions so that we can be in that place of equity and equality by 2030 in our self-driving cars with people flying off to Mars. And so that's why I looked at how we use tech and how we use data. And I really wanted to add a different dimension to how we talk about pay equity, because we hear a lot of conversations about women having to lean in and women asking for more pay and negotiation. But at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility on behalf of the organization to create those structures that will facilitate for that, to create, we were talking earlier about meetings in which men's voices are heard louder than women's voices. So it was more about how do we change the organizations and how do we change the structures within those organizations so that they remunerate and they make diverse talent feel valued to its true potential within that business.
Great. And so she did this using a technology solution, but Zara does not have a tech background. So how brave to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that when I started the company, because when I was graduating high school, if anyone would have told me that by the time I'm 40, I'd be doing statistical regression models, I would have laughed in their face. Like, there is no way I would have even thought about it, because maths and statistics, that's just not for girls. I thought, I'm going to study languages or I'm going to go in education, and that's like where I am, and I leave the statistics and the data and the tech to men. And then as I was progressing through my career, increasingly you see that actually data and tech and statistics and maths is where a lot of the power is and a lot of the money is. So that's how I made my way into that and actually got to a point where I'm really enjoying it.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it because you're very good at it. And so the technology does three main things, which is one of the reasons why SAP is so interested, which is first, helping companies understand that they have unfair pay, and then understand why they have unfair pay, and then using this data to help to rectify that. So it's very execution based. But I think if you go to a company and you say, you don't have equality in pay, they might say, to fix that problem, that's a massive cost to us. So why do companies even want to fix this from a financial perspective? And what has been that conversation when you talk to companies?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of like pay equity can mean different things. So one, it can mean equal pay for equal value. So are you paying people doing a similar job, delivering similar value to the organization the same? And that definition is also slightly challenged because what does same value mean? a lot of the way in which we structure organizations and structure pay has been developed in the 50s. And the world of work looked very different in the 50s from what it looks right now. Equal pay is a legal requirement. So if anyone in employment pays people differently, they can end up with Keith in the EOs. At the same time, so we have equal pay law, and that can get a lot of companies in trouble. Many of you might have heard about Google last year having to pay $118 million in compensation to about 500 women within the organization who were being paid differently than their male peers. So that can drive company decision making. Movement towards transparency is also driving companies to take decisions around it, because a lot of the younger generations are talking about pay openly. They're talking by the water cooler, but also a lot of the conversations are happening online, and you have a lot of platforms like Glassdoor, but also like Levels FYI or like Blind and Built It, where people are openly talking about the offers they've had for their jobs, about the offers they get for a promotion, and they disclose everything from base pay all the way to any kind of other benefits or variable pay that they've been offered. You get a lot of them leaking emails into those platforms, so employers really want to get ahead of the game. So they are starting to look at how they can understand their own data better.
Makes sense. So can you give us an example of one of your customers and the journey that that customer went through, please?
So I mean, it's an interesting one. We've been running since 2015, so we have quite a few customers. A lot of them in the UK because that's where we started, and the journey is really around understanding your data and starting with a sample of your population and looking at what kind of indicators do you want to compare and take into account when you compare people's pay. Do you want to look at things like length of service, education, skills, performance? Do you want to look at the functions and departments in which they are? We see a lot of companies where a project manager in a finance team will be paid differently than a project manager in a tech team. So all of these, taking all of those things into account. We see kind of progress still being quite small. So it's really hard to make progress, especially if you're a large organization, and a lot of the companies we work with have over 5,000 employees. So it's really difficult to kind of move and take corrective action. But we see progress in that they want to do this more often. They start bringing these numbers around pay equity to the boardroom and to conversations with the CEO, and they start going beyond the gender dimension. So we see a lot of employees. One of our largest customer in the UK is the Greater London Authority, and they go beyond looking at gender into looking at ethnicity and looking at intersectionality, because that is where a lot of the gaps are. And I was actually really excited to see a recent campaign in London run by the London Mayor, where it said if autocorrect tries to correct your name, we may need to correct your pay. So
I like
was
that.
Actually quite,
yeah, let's clap for that. That's awesome. With a name like Kange, that really hits home, you know? That's so funny. And so we're talking about unfair pay in terms of compensation, but we talked about it. We had our panel earlier that talks about investing. And so one way of getting paid is from the capital markets. But Zara, this very informed founder with a really innovative idea, was out fundraising and yet experienced pay inequality. How was your experience when you were fundraising?
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to see the panel earlier talking about investment and how we have more and more women in investment. When I started Gap Square, in Europe at least, investment in female-led businesses, especially in the tech space, was at 1%. So for every €1 invested in the tech space, women got the 1 cent. So that is tiny, and I was trying to raise in that environment, which oftentimes meant that I was pitching in rooms that looked very different from this room. There were a lot of white middle-aged middle-class men who were saying, but there is no such thing as a pay gap, there is no pay inequity, and my wife is perfectly fine staying at home with the children, so why, like, I don't understand what you're even pitching about. And it was either answers like that, or it was even the fact, like, this one day I was in London, I was about to pitch to this Oxford Innovation Network. A lot of the investors were coming in. I was looking at the view because it was looking over London Bridge. It was beautiful, and this guy comes up behind me and is like, "This is a great view. What time are we going to get our wine after the pitching?" And I turned around and I realized that actually he thinks I'm there because I'm going to be bringing in the wine for when the pitching and the competition, like the fundraise, starts. And that always put that inevitably from the get-go just puts you into two very different positions. Because even when you get up on the stage and you pitch, it's
Sets you off a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. So then Zara said, okay, in order for this company to work, it has to scale. We need to reach more people. She was having so many challenges with fundraising. So she said, I need to scale using on my own terms. And so she sought out partnerships like the one with SAP to help to use the backbone of a big brand to elevate her own brand. So can you talk about that thought process and how that partnership is going, please?
Yeah, so it's been fantastic. With the key thing we realized is, okay, we're not going to get investment. This is so much of my time is going into pitching into rooms where the general narrative is that pay equity doesn't exist and this agenda is going to go away. So this is not investable. And I've moved into identifying partners in the tech ecosystem, but also in the legal space, who helped us reach customer bases quite quickly. So it was really great to be on the SAP IO, a Future of Work program based out of San Francisco, because it offered us access to customers on the SAP store, and it also offered us access to amazing peers, like other startups who are in the same space. So startups like the Mum Project, a few people are here today, Mentor Spaces, and a few others where you kind of get this, like your own tribe, your peers of other founders who are going through the same challenges of scaling, of growing a tech business, and then you're there to support each other. So it was amazing from both access to a customer base, but also access to a supportive peer network.
Right, and it didn't stop there. She did something that most startups never do. I want you to be ready for what I'm going to say. Again, they started in 2015. She already exited. She was acquired. Zara was acquired. Come on. That's amazing. She was acquired by Expert HR, and now the dreams of scaling are actually a reality. So I'm excited. I'm proud of you. But so Expert HR, why was that a good decision for you?
So we were growing organically and we actually reached profitability, but we were still growing very slow because you're growing based on customer acquisition. And it's just you need to get to a certain point where you still feel comfortable that you have enough runway to pay wages. And so growth was slow. And then at one point we were contacted by Expert HR, and we knew of Expert HR because they were a competitor in the UK ecosystem. And then I found out that actually Expert HR is just the brand that sits within the LexisNexis group. And I was like, okay, this LexisNexis I know. And then I found out actually LexisNexis is a brand that sits within the RELX group, which is a FTSE 15. And all of that was kind of unfolding as I was talking to them, because I went into a call where I thought I'm going to talk to a couple of people in Expert HR, and I was talking to actually CFOs and COOs from RELX, from Lexis, and other entities within that space. So it was an interesting journey because we were a team of 10, and I still needed to make sure that the business is growing and it's scaling and it's actually going, while also participating in due diligence conversations. And obviously, when you talk about a huge FTSE company like RELX, their M&A process is a well-oiled machine and it involves hundreds of people. For them, a call with me is normal part of the day. For me, a call with them would have meant I'm not talking to a customer, I'm not talking to our team, I'm not participating at events, raising awareness, or building partnerships. We ironed it out in the end. We closed in July 2021. I'm still with the business and we're growing globally. So we were a team of 10. Now within Gap Square alone, we are a team of 55. So that's great. And we have a team here in the US. We have a team in Bristol, where we originally founded the company, in London, in Amsterdam, and have very big global ambition, because pay inequity is still a thing, and we still want to make it happen before we are in all our self-driving cars and waving people off to Mars.
It's true. And so even though she has accomplished this massive scale that we mentioned, still, there are a population of people that say the main reason why men get paid more is because they say to their boss, in the last year, I did these 10 things, so I deserve a promotion, which means a pay. So they're taking accountability of their accomplishments and asking for what they deserve. If women just did that, the gap would be smaller. What do you say to that?
That is not true. So if you look at the US alone, the gap in pay is, to every $1 earned by a man, a woman earns about 83 cents. Actually, the US celebrated Equal Pay Day on the 15th of March, which was the day when women would have gotten the same pay as men last year. So they have had to work all throughout January, February, and half of March to earn as much as men did in 2022. One of the big drivers of pay inequity is still the fact that there are gaps for the same role, but also the fact that women are more in roles that pay less per hour because of that occupation, and men are in more roles that pay more per hour. So if you look at the UK, if you look at the US, for jobs that pay less than 30,000 a year, 2 out of 3 of those jobs are occupied by women. So that is driving a huge discrepancy. And if you look at jobs that pay 100K or more, less than 1 in 3 is a woman in that role. And we're talking about roles in tech, we're talking about roles in finance, we're talking about roles in all of those occupations that are currently dominated by men. But also, if you look at the future of work and what the World Economic Forum is telling us about the future of jobs and future of work, these are the jobs that are on the increasing demand. So roles in AI, in data science, in robotics, in engineering are on the rise. Jobs that are highly occupied by women right now are on the decline because they're being automated, replaced by ChatGPT and other technologies.
Right. Okay. So we're almost going to wrap up. So what do you think the future is? What are you looking forward to? What can we expect?
I think I am looking forward to a future of pay equity. I have 2 young girls, 14 and 10, and I really want them to go into a world of work where they have that pay equity. I think the future holds a world where we review what a lot of values, what our values are around work, what kind of work is important for us as a society, and what kind of work, how we value the different jobs and how we value each other, so that we can review the system of pay, our philosophies around pay, our philosophies around how we work and how much time we spend at work, and the entire world of work. Let's change the world of work. That's
Yes, let's change the world of work. Absolutely. So if you are if you are a person that works at a company with employees, which by definition that would be the case, you need Gap Square. So how do you find it? Go SAP store, look up Gap Square, and deploy this technology, because this is the future of work and you need to be ahead of the game. Thank you so much. I'm Kange. This is Zara. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.